Hi everybody, welcome back. Got a very special delivery in the mail this week. What I got here is a whole case, 12 total, of these Tangent PS2-CD 4750 covered hoppers, Illinois Central Gulf. And if you take a look at these are in the original 1972 thin font. I'll talk about the font here shortly, but I'm going to go ahead and unpackage one of these and talk a little bit about this model. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this model while I'm opening it up. So this is from Tangent Scale Models, and in my opinion, Tangent produces probably the most realistic rolling stock available in HO scale and model railroading today. They have multiple varieties on their website. They have monthly announcements, and what I like about Tangent is when they make a product announcement, it is in stock and ready to go. So I received an email from Tangent on March 7th, 2021 with their March product releases. The 4750 covered hopper was one of them. They had several different road names, several different road numbers within those road names. You watch my channel, you know I model Illinois Central Gulf. They produced 12 different road numbers of this particular covered hopper, and if you notice that it has thin font, and I'll show you a comparison to a 4750 with a thicker font that was later for Illinois Central. But this particular offering of these 12 road numbers is actually already sold out. I'm producing this video on March 19th. I checked their website a couple days ago. I ordered them immediately when they were released on March 7th. They were sold out as of March 17th, so you cannot get these directly from Tangent anymore like I was able to. Still double check your hobby stores online or brick and mortar, and you can also certainly check any online auction sites to see if any of these are available. One of the things that I really like about the Tangent is they are extremely detailed and they're extremely prototypically accurate, and I'll talk about that. I know you pay a little bit more for these. They MSRP for $44.95. Since I got 12 of them, they have a quantity discount, so I was able to get them for less than what the MSRP is. But you do get what you pay for with these, and I'll show you why here in just a minute, because I've got several other Tangents that I'm going to show you. This particular one, again, 1972 Illinois Central Gulf. If you know a lot about the merger with Illinois Central and Gulf Mobile, Ohio, you know that during 1972 the merger was ongoing. They hadn't actually finalized the merger until 1973. But during the merger process, Illinois Central Gulf ordered a production run of 4750 covered hoppers from Pullman Standard, and they received this brand new paint, brand new eyeball logo, and it's a very stunning model. So I'm going to show you some of the spotting feature. Pullman Standard produced a tremendous amount of covered hoppers. The 4750 cubic foot covered hoppers began production in 1972. The production date on this is actually 1972. I'll actually show you a close-up of some of the lettering, and you can see that it was built in 1972. So this is a very early version of the Pullman Standard 4750. Some spotting features if you're looking at these. Probably the biggest spotting feature, the 4750s have a total of 18 evenly spaced side posts on each side of the covered hopper. These were produced from 1972 into the 1980s. The predecessor model for the 4750 was the 4740s, and I actually have a couple out on my layout here. I'll show you in just a second. The difference in spotting features between the 4750s and the 4740s, the 4740s only had 16 side posts, and the 4750s had 18 side posts. So that's going to be your primary difference. Just some other of the early model versions of the 4750, it had these ribbed roof hatches. I'm going to show you the brake setup here. It has an early version of the brakes, master cylinder, the brake cell air reservoir, and some of the brackets on there. I'll give you a close-up when I get it up on the layout. Other very, very subtle spotting features on this piece of rolling stock. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. On these side posts, the very bottom of them, they are flat. On later versions of the 4750, they actually notched each of the bottom of the side posts, and I tried to figure out why they actually put a notch in them, but these do not have notches in them, but the later versions do. So while I have it kind of close up here, I'm just going to give you a little bit more close-up view of the font and some of the markings. Again, what makes this model unique is one of the first orders of the 4750s, right in the midst of the merger with Gulf Mobile in Ohio. And the lettering on this is thin. It's a thin font letter. Illinois Central Gulf did not use this font very often, or very really for a long duration of time. If you go back and look at some of my other YouTube videos, Tangent produced some 40-foot high cube box cars back probably 3 or 4 years ago, probably 2016, 2017, somewhere in that ballpark. And they did some repaints of ICG high cube box cars. And if you go back and look at my video, even with those repaints, some of the font was thin letter, some of the font was the more traditional or the more widely used thicker font. So very interesting that Illinois Central used 2 iterations of their font, and Tangent was able to produce both versions in the covered hoppers as well as some of the high cube boxcars. Before I get up on my layout, I wanted to show you this as well. So obviously I grew up in the Midwest. I've seen probably more covered hoppers than any other type of freight car in my lifetime. Model Railroader magazine and Kalmbach Publishing produced this book, The Modeler's Guide to Grain. It's a fantastic book. I'd highly recommend it if you're into modeling Midwestern rural grain scenes. It has just a tremendous amount of info, but if you go to chapter 6, it actually has an entire chapter on freight cars. So every single type, from box cars, open hoppers, covered hoppers, talks about all of the Pullman standards, and then just the other manufacturers, Thrall, Magor. Great book, highly recommended. I've had this for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years now too, and it's just come in really handy as it helps me add realism to my layout with how I do my grain setup. An upgrade that Tangent has produced for this particular release of boxcars that wasn't available on their previous version, they now have animated bearing roller caps. So when you give your boxcar a push, you can see, or I'm sorry, your covered hopper a push, you can see that the roller bearings roll. Athearn has this with their trucks as well, but just again adds a nice little realism feature on the rolling stock that the bearing caps are animated. I show you this, and I know it's really hard to see up in here, and I'm going to show you a couple other different models here shortly, but you can take a look at the brake system on the early version of the 4750. You can see the air reservoir is actually on, it's closer to the right of your video screen in this particular variation of the model. There's no brackets or anything in there, and I'm going to show you a couple other versions here in just a second that again demonstrates how Tangent really has captured prototypical correctness of these models. Something else I wanted to highlight real quick, on the underside of the frame, in that center frame rail, on the early versions it is a solid piece. Later versions, Pullman Standard actually drilled holes through both of those frame rails, pretty much center line between where the the bins are, the whatever, I'm struggling for words here, the discharge hatches. So again, if you're watching this go on somebody's layout, prototypically you might not pick that up, but you know, really close inspection of these really shows how Tangent has done a great job of nailing this of this model. So here's a comparison. This also is a Tangent 4750 cubic foot covered hopper. This was released probably 2 or 3 years ago from Tangent. If you'll notice, it has much thicker font than does the new release. Here's sort of a, it's hard to get it all in the camera shot, but you can tell the difference between the thin font on the right, the thicker font on the left. What's interesting and ironic about this one has a build date of December 1973. The one on the right has a build date of August of 1972. So there really is only about a year's difference between the production of this one with the thicker font and the early version with the thin font. Again, I know this is really difficult to see because everything is orange in here. So the model on the right is the 1972 version that I already showed you, where the air reservoir is sort of off to the right. This one on camera screen left, you can see the air reservoir is actually higher and over towards the left of the screen. There's also some bracketing in there, which I know it really is hard to show on camera. But even though there's only about a 15-month difference between the manufacturing of these two hoppers, there are some differences, especially with the brake setup. Tangent nailed those prototypical differences. So again, I know these are expensive hoppers, but the old adage is you get what you pay for. When you buy a Tangent model, you get what you pay for, because it is absolutely prototypical, spot on, even when there is less than a year or just over a year's difference between the manufacturing of these two hoppers. Here's yet another Tangent release. This is a simplified scheme that Illinois Central Gulf started using back in the late 70s, early 80s. This is again a 4750 covered hopper. Couple spotting features. So this is about 7-8 years after the manufacturing of the first one. A couple things that are spotted here. It now has a bracket that runs the center support posts, so the center 12. So it starts here, ends here. That's a spotting feature on later versions of the 4750s. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. As I kind of showed you earlier, get it back in focus. There we go. You can see these notches at the bottom of the support brackets, or the support beams, that run vertically on the side of the hopper. So, you know, again, very subtle differences. I'm going to pan over here. Watching a train run around the track, you might not notice it, but it is a prototypical, accurate representation of an early version Pullman Standard versus the later version Pullman Standard. I kind of alluded to it earlier, and you can see right above the 38 on the frame, you can see that there's a hole drilled in there. Tangent captured that hole being drilled through the frame. So again, very detailed, very prototypically correct. I'm going to show you the differences here in the brake setup in just a second. Since this one, the simplified scheme was released, I think it was released in about 2015, 2016, it still has the old trucks on it, does not have animated roller bearing caps. So, I mean, I guess I could go through and swap out my fleet, but they're pretty expensive. Another spotting feature for the later version of the 4750s, it has smooth roof hatches, or smooth hatches for the troughs, as opposed to the rib versions on the earlier ones. Again, I apologize, I know it's really hard to see up in here, but again, later version is over here on the left, the earlier version is on your right. Some differences in how the brake system is set up, but again, it's you know, variations in how Pullman Standard manufactured them, and Tangent was able to capture those subtle variations with their modeling. Just real quick as another reference point and something to not look at that's not orange. This again is a Tangent scale model offering. This is a Pullman Standard 4740 covered hopper, and this was built in 1969, so just a couple years, about 3 years prior to the release of the 4750s. Again, you can see there are 16 support beams across there. What's interesting, again, be really cool to find out some of these answers. On the 4740s, they are notched. They have the vertical beam bars are actually notched. When they made the 4750s, the early versions did not have that, but the later versions did. So be curious to understand why Pullman Standard did that with their manufacturing. But outwardly, these hoppers look pretty much identical, and with the exception of 10 square foot of difference, or 10 cubic foot of difference within the capacity of the hopper, they are more or less similar. So you can tell I got a lot of covered hoppers, and you can tell I've got a lot of Tangent covered hoppers because they are the best and they're the most accurate. Finally, to wrap this video up, I just want to show you this too, since I was already making an order from Tangent. I love the fact that they produced a lot of different road names, a lot of different road numbers. But one thing I was really looking for was, I was used to seeing a lot of the ICG covered hoppers, but I saw probably just as many of plain gray covered hoppers. And Tangent released with their run the 4750s, one of these leasing companies with basically just it's a leased hopper, all gray, no markings. I'll scroll in here a little bit. So try to focus in on the lease. Paint ski, or the lease logo on here. So they still had a couple of these in stock when I last checked, but I picked up 3 of these just to sort of break up the all orange that I have, throw some of these gray lease units on the layout, because again, I was used to seeing a lot of these growing up as well. So beautiful models, very happy with this purchase. So that's it for today's video. I will do an operating session here probably sometime in the next week or two. I need to get all these out of the box, get them inspected, make sure there's no parts broken or anything like that, get a scene set up. But until then, very happy with this purchase. I'd highly recommend them. I know they are sold out on the Tangent website already, but definitely check your hobby stores, either online or brick and mortar, to pick these up if you want some. And be on the lookout for an operating session video here shortly. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Thank you.